Thank you all for coming. This is Proposal Development Workshop 2.0, where we're trying some new content for the spring session, spring semester. This is the second to last presentation in a series called Debriefing Your Proposal, or Debriefing Proposals. Today we have a special treat. We have a couple of guest speakers, actually one who will primarily be presenting today. So I'm going to be advancing the slides, so I apologize if we're a little bit out of sync. We're also going to micromanage the microphone. So we're going to actually pause a little bit in between each handoff because we're using old school software. Next one will be on Zoom. So as background, we're piloting, maybe the next one isn't going to be on Zoom. I got a funny face. This is pilot content, so I would appreciate all of your feedback as we go forward in all of this workshop series and individual workshops as well. Okay. If you're online, you might want to mute going forward just so we don't hear any background material or background noise. So I'm going to actually go backwards because I'm on the slide, and then I'm going to make Erica introduce herself so I can get off the microphone. So I'm Faye Farma. I am part of the research development unit here at ASU and come with a little bit of experience with proposals and some experience debriefing them. So I'll be talking, the objective of today's presentation will be to talk about debriefing proposals at a very high level and what you can hope to gain from that activity. And hopefully you'll depart today with some valuable questions to ask, some ways to set up your team, and to be able to move that process forward for your individually receiving information from sponsors, and then also as a larger team as a faculty member or a staff member. And with that, I'm going to turn off my microphone and let Erica take over.
Hi, I'm Erica Jerme. I'm calling from beautiful Golden, Colorado. I'm a proposal manager at the Colorado School of Mines. I was at ASU until last summer. I've been working on proposals in higher ed for the last 5 years almost, and I'm certified by the Association of Proposal Management Professionals. A quick plug for my faculty, if any of you are looking for collaborators in earth, energy, or environment, I'd be happy to connect you. I think I'm actually going to throw it back to you for the next few slides.
Thanks, Erica. So, see, smooth transition. Professionals. I just want to draw your attention to Research Academy. That's where we post all of these events, and you will be notified once you've signed up for one or more events. You'll be notified of upcoming events. We post all of our events through Research Academy. And then if you have any questions on the actual submission of proposals or the functional way to submit proposals, researchadmin.asu.edu is your one-stop source for information. F&A rates, who to submit a proposal through, the process of the project development life cycle is all located there. And then finally, we have funding.asu.edu, which is, again, it's a pre-award one-stop shop for events, blogs, information, limited submissions, funding opportunities, and tools that you can use to find those opportunities. So just want to put a pitch out there for that. You can use Get Notifications on the right-hand side of your screen to opt into a weekly email update and digest of everything that we posted on that website. Okay, and then I will pitch it back over to Erica.
Okay, so what do we mean by debrief? Basically, it's an in-person or virtual meeting where you come together as a team, or if it's just yourself and you're there with a piece of paper and taking notes, that works too. But basically, the idea is you're going to reflect on the proposal you submitted and the process you went through to get to that final submission, with the goal of identifying steps to improve your process, improve your next proposal, and maybe build team cohesion, among others. So it may be before or after you receive sponsor feedback, or both. And you might even have the opportunity to do a formal debrief with your sponsor. Again, this is an action-oriented meeting. It's not just a meeting for the sake of a meeting. You want to come out with next steps. So it's not the same as going out for beers 5 minutes after submitting your proposal, although I do recommend doing that, but chances are you'll be a little bit too fried to think about your next proposal. And it should be constructive. You don't want to use this. This is not a space to point fingers or place blame on anyone on your team. Next slide, please. So you might hear a debrief called something else, maybe a hot wash if you're in the military, an after action report, postmortem, lessons learned. I'm not sure it really matters what you call it as long as you do it. Choose a word that will get you excited and bring your team together. That's all I have to say. Next slide, please. So why would you debrief a proposal? I know that all of you are super busy. It's hard enough just to find the time to write a proposal, let alone create another meeting so that you can talk about that proposal you submitted 2 months ago. I understand time is a legitimate concern. It's also opening yourself up to criticism, which is hard for any human. But I would argue that the benefits greatly outweigh those concerns. Next slide, please. So here are just a few benefits. You're going to be building that ethos of continuous improvement. You're hopefully increasing your team cohesion, assuming that you're demonstrating to your team that you're taking in their feedback. It's an opportunity to celebrate success. Even if you were not successful with your proposal, you hopefully were successful in submitting a proposal and you can recognize the contributions of your team members. A huge benefit is taking the time to reflect on and improve your process and then identify and plan next steps for your idea if you weren't funded. And refine your idea so that your next proposal is better and your idea is more competitive next time. Next slide, please. So at the end of the day, doing a debrief is going to hopefully help you win more proposals. I stole this slide from the last workshop that y'all did. Tobin and Kellyanne had a great presentation on characteristics of winning proposals. If you missed that, you can watch it on funding.asu.edu. So I think a lot of the benefits of doing a debrief tie directly to these characteristics of winning proposals. Right? If you're taking the time after submitting a proposal before working on the next opportunity to refine your process, reflect on what could have gone better, hone your idea, that's going to carry you a long way toward being thoroughly prepared for your next proposal and having very well articulated great ideas in that next proposal. Also, if you're bringing your team together and demonstrating to them that you really value their insights on the process, that should help build a more cooperative team. Similarly, if you're taking the time to really digest and understand the feedback from your reviewers, if you do a debrief after receiving that feedback, the next time you go to write a proposal, you'll do so with a much better understanding of how you'll be evaluated. And hopefully that will help you write more effectively to those evaluation criteria. Finally, if you have the opportunity to debrief with your sponsor, please be nice. Please show them that you are receptive and open to feedback and value their time, and that will go a long way toward building a positive relationship with that program officer. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I've convinced you all to debrief all of your proposals. So how do you get started? You're going to start by asking yourself some questions. Next slide. Most important, what is your intended goal or outcome? Do you want to focus on improving your proposal development process? Do you want to figure out how to transition to a different sponsor or build team cohesion or start planning next steps for project implementation? Whatever the goal is, just make sure you have a goal. Next slide, please. important to think about when will you actually have time and the bandwidth to be fully present for this meeting and have the space to absorb feedback. Next slide, please. It's also worth considering when you'll receive your reviews from the sponsor. So if you submitted an NSF proposal and you know it's probably going to be 6 to 9 months before you hear anything back, you might want to go ahead and do your debrief now while the experience is still fresh in your mind. If you just submitted a DARPA proposal like I did, and you're expecting feedback within 6 to 8 weeks, you might want to wait to do your debrief until you know whether or not you've been funded. And of course, if you're debriefing with your sponsor, you'll also have to take their schedule into consideration. Next slide. Do you want to do a formal or an informal debrief? Think about the setting. I know this is kind of a little bit more woo-woo, but to give you a concrete example, and we'll give more examples from debriefs as well, but I recently worked on a DARPA proposal that the team was meeting several hours a week. There were some team tensions. We're typically meeting in this very formal, fancy, dark, oil and gas industry sponsored conference room. It was very big and there was a lot of space between the team members. And then one day we needed to meet and that conference room wasn't available. We met in the PI's office and crowded around his little conference table, shoulder to shoulder for 3 hours, banging out the project schedule. And there's something on the team just lightened in the mood. And afterwards, the PI and I talked about it, and we both felt that just that change of venue, going to a more informal setting, really helped with team cohesion. So don't dismiss some of those softer sides of meeting planning. Next slide, please. Who should you invite? Again, this will depend on your goal. If you are trying to improve your process, you probably want to cast a wider net. Invite anyone who touched the proposal, the RA, maybe the graphic designer, maybe if there's a cost share or compliance issue at the last minute, maybe someone from ORSPA would have really great insights into how you could improve your process next time. Alternatively, if your goal is more to refine the scientific idea, you probably want to have a smaller, more technical team in the room. Just different things to think about. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're just going to jump into a few case studies to give you concrete examples of the diverse types of debriefs we've done over the last few years. Starting with the NSF NeuroNext. So as background, in 2016, 3 teams from ASU proposed to the NSF NeuroNext program, which was brand new at the time. None of them were funded, and the competitive intelligence team in RD did an analysis of who was funded and found that it was largely institutions with medical schools or very well-known, highly ranked neuroscience programs. Next slide, please. So we set up a debrief about a year later with the goal of bringing ASU's neuroscience community together to identify next steps to increase the competitiveness of that research group. Next slide, please. And it was a very formal debrief right there in the biodesign auditorium. We had the 3 PIs up front as panelists on stools with microphones. I started out by asking them very simple questions. What went well in the proposal development process? What would you do differently in your next proposal? Any key takeaways from the reviewer feedback? And then we opened the conversation up to the audience. And again, we'd invited all of the neuroscience researchers on campus. So the outcome was really having this conversation and identifying new sponsors that neuroscience faculty could start interacting with, and new program managers that they could start working with to build the profile of neuroscience research on campus. I believe you're doing a kickoff for the NeuroNext tomorrow, so hopefully some of what came out of that debrief will help improve your success in this round. Next slide, please. My second example is completely different, totally opposite end of the spectrum. This was a debrief that I did just a few months ago here at Mines. I worked on a DOE machine learning for geothermal energy proposal with a smaller team. It was quite diverse. There was mining and engineering, geophysics, and a business professor. And the team had come together specifically for this proposal. They hadn't worked together in the past. And the PI, the mining engineer, had not even met the business professor before the debrief. And he was brought in two weeks before submission. So it was all just this team that was just kind of thrown together. So we came together about a month after submission. We still don't know the outcome of the proposal, but at the time the team had just submitted responses to initial reviewer comments that seemed overall pretty positive. Next slide, please. And this debrief was initiated by the PI, and honestly, I don't think she would call it a debrief. She wanted to bring us all together to thank the team members for their contributions. She recognized that she had not been as present and involved as she wanted to be while we were writing the proposal, and she just was very grateful for all the support she received. So it was really an opportunity to build team cohesion. Next slide, please. And she thanked us by inviting us to her office and making Turkish coffee for us. She's from Turkey, and the coffee was amazing. But it was this very informal debrief where just the act of serving coffee opened up this conversation about coffee in different cultures. So the business professor was there. Again, he and the PI had never met before. And he is from, I think, from Egypt. So he shared the coffee culture in his country. The postdoc had spent time in Italy, and so she talked about coffee in Italy. The geophysicist and the RA and I had all been Peace Corps volunteers. So we all had these very unique experiences related to coffee, but we're able to share this experience together. And starting off with this very informal conversation really broke down any barriers that could have existed across disciplines and across the academic hierarchy, right? So the PI has an endowed chair, that one of the faculty members was an untenured assistant professor. The other faculty member was teaching faculty, and there was no feeling of hierarchy within that room. We did talk about what went well and what didn't go so great in the proposal process, but most of the conversation was very future-oriented. They spent most of the time talking about future collaborations, ideas that resonated with them across these really disparate disciplines. And then the really exciting outcome to see in this meeting was that the PI and the business professor decided to meet once a month, go for a walk, and talk about ideas that got them excited and identify future collaborations. So I am confident that that group will propose to another really interesting opportunity. I'm hopeful they'll be funded, and if they are, I think they'll be well on their way to being a cohesive team. Next slide, please. Handing it over to Tim.
Tim's been called away, so I will briefly present, and Kellyanne doesn't want to be put on the spot. So, you all ready for it? Well, if I get anything wrong, correct me. So this is Materials Innovation Platform, and it was due in February. It was due in February. I'm already getting it wrong. And a large team that had worked together on multiple different proposals. But because of the deadline, the proposal was actually ready to go at that deadline, thanks to the wonderful management of Kellyanne and the whole team being prepared. But because of the deadline postponement, they've been talking about how to think about ways to improve the proposal and the team over time, and have had that space to really design what is that event going to look like after the proposal is submitted. So the point of this case study is to say you should be thinking about how you're going to come together after submission, during your submission. So he and Kellyanne drafted questions that I'm going to share with you right now. That the overall goal for the debrief is right now to improve teamwork and success rates. You always want to have a very high success rate, obviously. 100% would be great. But we have to work on developing the team and the proposal process so that you can achieve that, independent of qualifying the opportunity. So the questions that they're going to ask their team are pretty standard, but I wanted to bring them up because they have actually purposely thought through them, and you can use them in your circumstances. These are all scalable questions, too, for the most part. Top 3 things that went well. Eric has already alluded to that. Identify 3 things that could use improvement. Again, kind of positive, not 3 things that really were terrible and caused you to cry at night, right? So it's a little bit more of a positive spin. So then they looked at specific aspects of the team that they wanted feedback on. So in this particular case, you may not have proposal management because it's a very unique skill set that's applied to not all proposals. So they ask about what was the utility of the proposal manager, group coordination. There were many people involved in this proposal and many subcontracts, but you could ask the same question as a PI. How effective, how well did I develop the process for inclusion of the right people at the right time for the right activities? As a single PI, you should be able to identify who needs to be in the room, when and where and how. And that's not up for you to decide. It's the people who you've invited to your debrief. Reviewing, in this particular case, they sent it to external reviewers and got feedback, and they want to know exactly how that worked. As an independent PI, or a single PI, we highly recommend that other people read your proposal prior to submission. It is an amazing, cheap, and easy tool to improve your proposal overall, and specifically influence your success rate. So this might be something that you want to adapt for a particular situation. Proposal integration, this is also applicable to a single PI because you want a cohesive theme and consistent message over your 12 pages for your NSF or your 15 pages for NIH. So you want to make sure that your messaging is clear and consistent, and the people that you've brought for your debrief will be able to comment on that. And then finally, there are only 7 questions. What were the key issues, plus or minus? Oh, I'm presenting for Tim, and he just walked in. For each proposal area that could benefit from boilerplate language. So there will always be places in a proposal that you can adapt particular items that are useful across multiple proposal efforts. So we're generally for developing boilerplate for specific sections that are by sponsor and by team. However, you always want to tailor your boilerplate for your specific solicitation and the effort and the science you're proposing. So there's a fine line there. But this will get your team or your group thinking about what are the things that are easily put together quickly for the next cycle and the next application. I'm on the fence as to now whether to introduce Tim, because I've gone through all your slides. Do you? Yeah, I totally just did. I'm going to give an opportunity for Kellyanne and Tim to. So Kellyanne was here the whole time that I presented, so you can just.
One other question that we're considering to add is about the budgeting process. So how did the budgeting process go for the team and for the subcontractors, and does it reflect the technical approach, et cetera?
Also applicable for a single PI. Yep. Okay, Tim, do you want to add anything to these? I just said the MIP was due, and you have time to think about it now. Go for it.
Yeah, so to the questions that we added, Kellyanne and I actually had a conversation about what are sort of developing a standard set of questions so that we would just have them handy that would be relevant across a broad group of proposals. So we have those now, and since this room seems to be a mix of people submitting proposals and people helping others submit proposals, hopefully this is a useful tool for the research development community.
When we were looking for questions, I went to APMP and some of our Shipley resources, and these proposal management best practice trainers in the industry, they oftentimes, I found a few just lists, page-long lists of different questions that you could ask in a debrief meeting. So that's where we pulled some of these, and then Tim pulled some from his experience too. So if you want a place to start as you think through what questions you need to ask, I recommend just Googling proposal debrief question lists. And then just make sure that they're really relevant to your team. You don't want to talk about things in these meetings that don't serve that overall goal that Erica and Faye talked about.
Put my microphone on and then I think I messed it up, so I apologize. Those are excellent points, and so what I hear is, so we'll submit this PDF out to the world, and you can adapt them as you want. I think we'll add a slide for a budget question. Okay, and this is Erica, so I'm gonna turn off Erica.
Okay, so those are 3 really different examples of what a debrief could look like. Ultimately, I think in all of these cases, the goal was to improve the next proposal and hopefully be more successful in the future. And in general, the questions that you ask fit into these 3 buckets, regardless of how specific or unspecific you get in the conversation. We want to talk about what went well, what would you do differently next time, and what is the next step. And then you want to ask those questions and sit back and listen and try to be as impartial as you can and really reflect on the process. Next slide, please. So a few tips. Don't take it personally. Of course, easier said than done. But remember that this is meant to improve your process. It's not meant to be an indictment of your concept or your leadership or your writing. Make sure that you're inviting the right people to come. If there's someone you really don't want to invite, chances are that person has something valuable to contribute that you really should listen to, and so go ahead and invite that person. And then make sure that everyone feels welcome and has space to participate. You know, there will be quieter and louder people in the group. Try to facilitate the conversation in a way to give everyone a voice. And also be aware of those power dynamics that can be present in the room. Staff especially often have a hard time speaking up when they're talking to potentially presenting criticisms to very senior faculty members. And similarly, untenured faculty members might also feel more vulnerable. So try to create a safe space and make it clear that all input is welcome. You can even be open to meeting with people one-on-one or taking emails before or after the meeting so that anyone who doesn't feel comfortable speaking up in front of the group or who thinks of something after the fact can still have an opportunity to participate and have their voice heard. Think through the right setting and the level of formality for your meeting. You know, we've presented a few different examples of different levels of formality. I gave that example of just how changing the conference room, the setting for a standard team meeting, can really shift the energy in the group. That's worth thinking about. Be positive. Set a positive tone by asking what went well to start with, and try to frame all of your questions positively so that you're not inviting just a barrage of negative comments. Set a tone for to incorporate constructive feedback. And then finally, leave with action items. You want to show your team that you're taking their insights to heart and you're thinking through how to use their feedback and do better next time. So hopefully by taking some of these steps and creating a positive, welcoming environment for your debrief and showing the team members that their time was valuable and create future actions that result in a better proposal, hopefully that will help create a culture of doing debriefs regularly. Because that's only going to help your proposals be better and more successful. Next slide. So what if you're awarded? Do you still do a debrief? I think absolutely. You want to take this opportunity to celebrate your success, recognize the work of your team members, and you definitely want to talk through what went well so that you're identifying and documenting anything you did in this proposal process that you want to make sure to replicate in the future. It's also really important to talk about what didn't go well, because chances are, if something didn't go well in the proposal process, it's likely to rear its head again when you're implementing your project. So if you can identify that before project implementation and address it, hopefully that will help your project be implemented a little bit more smoothly. And then finally, take that time to build the team cohesion, because y'all are going to be working together for the next 3 to 5 years. So you better get used to being together. I think that's all. I'm going to hand it back to you.
So who can help me? For individual PIs, you should be scribbling notes and thinking about what the next step is for you. You can reach out to your RA staff. Some are equipped with bandwidth to walk through a process with you, and would encourage it. If you have a director level leadership in that position in a research administrative role, they might help navigate, collect information, et cetera, talk about the proposal, be able to debrief the sponsor feedback. So I encourage you to look at your local resources first and see what you can do as an individual PI. I do want to give a shout out, like part of what we talked about as we were preparing this was Teachers College has an actually robust system for evaluating feedback from a sponsor and kind of doing a qualitative analysis and rolling up the major themes. So if you're interested in that, I'd reach out to Sarah Pulaski, who runs that research development office there. She also, her team does it specifically for Teachers College faculty. We're toying with the idea of bringing them back and talking about the ways that they do it as a research administrative seminar. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and we'll sign you up for that next one. You can also tag along to debriefs. So one quick and easy way is to participate in a proposal and ask them if they're going to debrief. If they do debrief, you can be invited. You can go sit in. I know other people who have helped with proposals have been added as facilitators of debriefs because they've been so competent in their job as either proposal managers or facilitators that they come in and they talk to, they get invited to come and lead a debrief. And that's a really special opportunity to see how another team can walk through the process of what they did. If you're interested in contracting with a proposal manager to do that activity, more than happy to see if we can find somebody to do that for you. I'm sure that if we can find the time in the day, that would be interesting for our proposal managers to do. You might also want to think about contracting with or asking for another faculty member or another staff member to volunteer for that process. Again, happy to talk through that process with you. We don't currently have a standing way of doing a debrief outside of an actual proposal that we haven't worked on. And LJ wants to ask a question from online. Or?
The Jeannie Wilson says, thanks for the shout out, Faye.
Yeah, so Jeannie Wilson is the one at Teachers College. Jeannie and Juliana Carson do the walkthrough with a single PI, and it's a really effective tool. We will be distributing the questions that were developed by Kellyanne and Tim. You can use all the examples that we have. You're welcome to use them. And then I want to follow up on Kellyanne's suggestion, which is Google. So it's my last note here. It's Google for examples. So you can always Google for examples on how to debrief, and that's helpful. But I do want to show Erica has, she found an email. She hasn't worked for us for 8 months, and so she's still doing this in her free time. So I want to appreciate that for a moment. But also, I wanted to share an email that it was one of her last debriefs. This is a multi-million-dollar proposal that she helped write and manage. Less write, more management. It went to external review. This was literally the notes after the massive debrief they did. And that's really how simple it needs to be. So it's a $20 million effort, $20 to $25 million effort, multiple universities, very large scale, deal. And these were the notes out of the meeting. And that's really just as simple as it needs to be. And that team is pursuing other opportunities. So I'm going to take a minute and say our upcoming event, it's not tomorrow, but it's in 2 days. Kellyanne and Quinn will be managing that kickoff for the NeuroNext. It's a very different solicitation this year, according to Quinn and Kellyanne. So make sure if you're interested to attend that. It's also on Research Academy. And then our next meeting will be led by Michelle Sachs of the Proposal Development Workshop 2.0. And Michelle Sachs is a biodesign research developer. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. So sign up for that on researchacademy.asu.edu as well. That'll be the last of it. We have one more meeting after that, which is using Amazon headquarters proposals as examples for proposals. It's very specific. You don't maybe not want to attend that one. It's totally fine. I won't be offended. So are there questions online or in this massively packed auditorium? Okay, so I want to give a great thank you to Erica for taking time out of her day to come here and to pipe in and share your experience. Everybody's clapping, Erica. And then Tim for contributing the slides. I appreciate that. Sorry we didn't get a chance to highlight you. And then Teachers College for whatever they're going to contribute afterwards. I think that's it. I think we'll send out the recording and the PowerPoint so you can take notes off the PowerPoint. Thank you online for attending. Have a great day.